The sky over Epsilon 9 burned with unnatural fire. The once peaceful human colony now trembled under the might of the Craxian Empire. Their fleet, a dark mass of warships, hovered above the planet like hungry predators. Massive energy cannons glowed ominously before unleashing hell upon the surface. Entire city blocks turned to ash within seconds. Buildings crumbled. Communication towers melted. The screams of civilians echoed through the burning streets before being silenced forever. Commander Xyrock of the Craxian Empire stood aboard his flagship, arms crossed over his armored chest, his reptilian eyes scanning the destruction below. He let out a slow, satisfied breath. "Pathetic," he muttered. "They don't even fight back." For centuries, the Craxians had dominated weaker species, crushing them under their superior technology. Conquering Epsilon 9 was supposed to be just another routine operation. Xyrock had been told that humans were primitive, fragile, barely worthy of notice. He was here not for war, but for a demonstration. A message to the rest of the galaxy that the Craxian Empire tolerated no challengers. He tapped a button on his console, activating the planetary broadcast system. His voice, cold and commanding, rang out across the remains of the colony. "Humans of Epsilon 9, your world now belongs to the Craxian Empire. Surrender, and you may yet live to serve us. Resist, and you will be erased." Silence. Xyrock frowned. He had expected terrified cries, desperate pleas for mercy. Instead, there was nothing. The planet below was eerily quiet, save for the occasional explosion from orbital strikes. One of his officers, a younger Craxian named Velk, turned to him hesitantly. "Commander, our scans show no signs of human activity. No distress signals. No evacuation attempts. It's strange." Xyrock scoffed. "They have accepted their fate. Land the troops. Wipe out the survivors." Moments later, thousands of Craxian soldiers descended in drop pods, their massive war machines following closely behind. The 1st Battalion touched down in the capital city, their armor gleaming under the light of the planet's twin moons. The streets were filled with smoke and rubble, but something was wrong. There were no bodies, no civilians, no soldiers, just an empty, ruined city. Velk's tail twitched nervously as he activated his scanner. "Sir, I don't like this. Where are they?" Xyrock growled in annoyance. "Enough. Spread out. Secure the city. If they are hiding, flush them out." The Craxians moved forward, their boots crunching over shattered glass and debris. Their sensor drones hovered ahead, scanning for life signs. The air was thick with the smell of burning metal. The silence was unnatural. Then one of the drones flickered and dropped from the air. A second later, another, and another. Within moments, every drone in the battalion went dark. Velk spun around, his claws gripping his plasma rifle. "Commander, we're losing our surveillance units. Something is jamming them." Xyrock's eyes narrowed. A malfunction. A scream cut through the comms. Then gunfire. Then static. Xyrock turned sharply toward the source of the disturbance. A squad of his elite soldiers had just turned a street corner and vanished from the radar. He tapped his wrist communicator. "Squad 6, report." Silence. A moment later, the channel opened. Heavy breathing. Static. Then a choked whisper. "Therier." Xyrock's blood ran cold. "Who's here?" Before the soldier could answer, a loud gunshot rang out. The line went dead. Xyrock's claws clenched into fists, formed defensive positions. "I want a full scan off." A sharp crack echoed through the street. The Craxian officer standing beside him stiffened. A perfect, smoking hole had appeared in the center of his helmet. His body swayed for a moment before crumpling to the ground. Sniper fire. Panic spread through the ranks. Craxian soldiers ducked behind cover, scanning the rooftops with glowing red optics. But there was nothing. No movement. No sign of the attacker. Then, another shot. Another Craxian fell. Then another. Then another. Xyrok's scales bristled with unease. This wasn't a desperate last stand. This was a hunt. A new voice crackled over the Craxian comms, deeper, colder. A voice that did not belong to the Craxians. "Welcome to Epsilon 9. Then, all hell broke loose. From the shadows, figures emerged, humans, clad in advanced combat armor, moving like wraiths through the smoke. Their rifles spat blue streaks of energy. Their blades flashed in the moonlight. They struck with precision, vanishing before the Craxians could retaliate. Explosions erupted as pre-planted charges detonated, flipping Craxian vehicles and sending fireballs into the sky. Alien soldiers screamed as EMP pulses fried their weapons and powered armor, leaving them defenseless. Xyrok barely had time to process the carnage before a squad of cloaked humans appeared behind his front line, slicing through his forces like ghosts. "Commander," Velk shouted, "they're everywhere." Xyrok bared his fangs. Impossible. They should be running for their lives. Another explosion rocked the city, sending shockwaves through the streets. Human forces moved like specters, attacking and disappearing, never staying in one place long enough to be caught. Xyrok's mind raced. This wasn't an ambush. This wasn't resistance. This was a trap. The humans hadn't fled. They had been waiting. A slow realization settled over him, a terrifying one. Humans weren't the prey here. They were the predators. The battlefield was no longer under Craxian control. It belonged to the humans now. The once proud invaders, who had arrived expecting an easy conquest, found themselves trapped in a nightmare they could not understand. The city of Epsilon 9 had turned into a death trap, and every shadow, every alley, every rooftop held the promise of unseen terror. Xyrok's forces were elite, trained to dominate any enemy they encountered. But none of their training had prepared them for this. They had expected a broken people begging for mercy. Instead, they were being hunted by an enemy that refused to show itself. The air was thick with smoke, the ruins around them whispering with unseen movement. Craxian squads moved cautiously through the streets, their weapons raised, but they were already too late. The moment they stepped into the open, the nightmare began. A single shot rang out, slicing through the head of a Craxian scout. He collapsed before he could even react, his rifle clattering to the ground. The others barely had time to turn before another shot echoed through the air. Another soldier down. Panic surged through the Craxian ranks. Their armor was supposed to withstand standard energy weapons, but these human rifles were something else. The rounds tore through them like paper, as if their technology meant nothing. "Snipers," one of them shouted, ducking behind the wreckage of a crashed transport. The squad leader barked into his communicator. "Xyrok, we're under attack." The humans. Another shot. The squad leader was gone. The remaining Craxians fired wildly in every direction, but there was nothing to shoot at. The enemy was invisible, striking from the darkness and vanishing before they could be targeted. Xyrok, still positioned near the command post, heard the screams of his soldiers over the comms. Every channel was filled with desperate calls for help, reports of squads being wiped out in seconds, their attackers never even seen. This was no war. This was an execution. Then the real slaughter began. From the rooftops, figures leaped down, moving with inhuman speed and precision. Their armor gleamed black against the fire-lit streets, their faces hidden behind visors that glowed with an eerie blue light. They were not just soldiers. They were hunters. They moved as one, weaving through enemy fire, using the ruins to their advantage. Craxian warriors turned their weapons toward them, but before they could get a shot off, humans were already in their midst. A knife sliced through a Craxian's throat before he even saw his attacker. Another soldier was lifted off his feet by a brutal strike to the chest, his armor crumpling under the force. The Craxians tried to fight back, but they were too slow, too unprepared. Explosions tore through the streets as human-planted charges detonated in key locations. Craxian tanks, once symbols of unstoppable power, were now nothing more than burning wrecks. A squadron of heavy infantry attempted to regroup, but the moment they stepped into a crossroad, 2 energy grenades rolled at their feet. A heartbeat later, the entire squad was vaporized. Xerox watched the destruction unfold with growing horror. His forces were being massacred. The humans were relentless, their attack precise and calculated. They didn't rush into battle blindly. They struck where it hurt the most, hitting supply lines, taking out commanders, leaving the Craxians confused and disoriented. Where are they getting this technology? Velk, his second-in-command, gasped as he ducked behind cover, barely avoiding a sniper round. Xerox had no answer. These humans were supposed to be weak, their weapons outdated. But what he was seeing now, this was something else. Their weapons were more advanced than intelligence had reported. Their tactics were beyond anything the Craxians had encountered. Then, as if to confirm his worst fears, the shadows moved again. A figure landed in front of him, rising from a crouch. His armor was different from the others, bulkier, reinforced, covered in battle scars from wars fought across the galaxy. Xerox knew immediately that this was not an ordinary soldier. This was a leader. The human commander stood tall, gripping a blood-stained combat knife in one hand and a modified rifle in the other. His presence alone was a declaration of war. "Commander Xerox," the human said, his voice steady, almost amused. "Didn't expect resistance, did you?" Xerox bared his fangs. You planned this." The human tilted his head slightly. "We've been planning this since the day your empire set its eyes on us." Xerox's mind reeled. This wasn't a desperate last stand. This wasn't luck. This was a trap. The Craxians had walked straight into a war they could not win. Before Xerox could react, the human commander lunged forward. The blade flashed. Blood sprayed across the command console. And just like that, another Craxian officer fell. Panic rippled through the remaining forces. They were losing. Xerox knew it now. This was not just a battle. This was the beginning of the end. The battlefield was in chaos, but for Sergeant Bonner, chaos was where he thrived. He stood at the edge of the ruined city, his combat armor scorched and scratched from the night's relentless fighting. His breath was steady, his grip on his weapon firm. His team was waiting for his signal, crouched in the shadows, their armor blending seamlessly into the environment. Bonner activated his helmet's tactical overlay. The battlefield was a mess of red and blue markers, red for enemy positions, blue for his squad. The Craxians were regrouping near the remains of an old government building, using their heavy mechs and energy shields to form a defensive perimeter. The moment Bonner saw it, he smirked. They were scared. Good. He tapped his communicator. "Alpha Team, report." "South entrance secured," a voice responded. "No survivors." "West side clear," another team chimed in. Bonner's smirk widened. The trap was closing. Across the ruined city, the Craxians were falling back, trying to form a defensive stronghold. Their numbers were dwindling, but their desperation made them dangerous. Their war machines hummed with energy, plasma cannons glowing in the darkness. But Bonner knew something they didn't. This wasn't their stronghold. It was their grave. He raised his fist, a silent command. "Go." His squad moved like shadows, silent, efficient, lethal. They advanced through the smoke-filled ruins, their boots barely making a sound against the rubble. Each soldier was armed with the best humanity had to offer: adaptive cloaking, armor-piercing rounds, and years of experience in asymmetric warfare. The Craxians had superior numbers, but Bonner and his team had something far more dangerous. They had patience. A Craxian patrol passed by, oblivious to the soldiers hiding mere feet away. The moment they stepped into the kill zone, Bonner struck. His rifle coughed once, sending a single high-velocity round through the skull of the lead soldier. Before the others could react, his team opened fire. Suppressed rounds punched through armor, Silenced blades found weak points in Craxian defenses, and in less than 10 seconds, the entire squad was gone. Not a single alarm had been raised. Bonner's heart pounded, but not from fear. This was what he was trained for. The enemy thought they had invaded a colony. They had no idea they had stepped onto a battlefield designed to kill them. He pressed forward, his squad following close behind. As they neared the Craxian stronghold, he caught sight of their commander, Xerox. The Craxian leader was barking orders, his scaled face twisted in fury. The once arrogant warrior was panicking. Bonner could see it in the way he paced, in the way his troops hesitated before following his commands. The Craxians were breaking. Bonner grinned. Time to finish this. He raised his weapon, took careful aim, and whispered into his comm, "All teams, open fire." The night exploded with gunfire. Craxian soldiers screamed as they fell, their defenses shattered in an instant. Grenades sailed through the air, detonating in the heart of the enemy formation. Bonner sprinted forward, weaving through enemy fire. A Craxian soldier lunged at him, plasma blade flashing. Bonner ducked under the swing and drove his knife into the alien's throat. Blood sprayed across his visor as he yanked the blade free, already moving toward his next target. The battlefield was pure carnage. The once proud Craxian force was being torn apart. Some tried to run. Some tried to fight. None survived. Through the chaos, Bonner locked eyes with Xerox. The Craxian commander's reptilian pupils narrowed, and for the first time since the invasion began, he looked afraid. Bonner lifted his rifle and aimed straight at the alien's head. Xerox turned and ran. Bonner chuckled darkly. The hunt wasn't over yet. The battlefield was silent. Smoke rose from the ruins of the Craxian stronghold, the once imposing war machines, now nothing more than twisted metal and scorched debris. Bonner stood amid the destruction, his rifle still warm from the last shot fired. The humans had won this battle, but the war was far from over. A low rumble echoed across the sky, a deep, unnatural sound that sent a chill down Bonner's spine. He turned his gaze upward, and his breath caught in his throat. It was here. A massive shadow stretched across the battlefield, blocking out the light from the twin moons above. The Craxian dreadnought had arrived. The behemoth ship descended slowly, its black hull reflecting the glow of the burning city below. It was unlike anything the humans had faced before, a true weapon of war, built to annihilate entire civilizations. Massive cannons lined its sides, each capable of vaporizing a city block with a single shot. Its surface rippled with energy, a shield so powerful that no human weapon could hope to break through. Bonner felt a knot form in his stomach. He had expected a counterattack, but not this. The Craxians weren't just sending reinforcements. They were sending a message. This war was no longer about conquest. It was about extermination. A deep, guttural voice boomed through the comm channels, translated into harsh, mechanical English. "Humans, you have sealed your fate." The voice belonged to Supreme Warlord Xyros, leader of the Craxian war fleets. Unlike Xyros, Xyros was no battlefield commander. He was a force of destruction, a legend whispered in terror among conquered worlds. He had razed planets, wiped out entire species, and now he had turned his full attention to humanity. Bonner clenched his jaw. He refused to be afraid. "All units, fall back to defensive positions," he ordered, switching to the encrypted human comm channel. "We hold the line." His soldiers responded without hesitation, moving into position. They had come too far to retreat now. Then the first shot came. A beam of pure energy erupted from the dreadnought's central cannon, cutting through the sky like a divine hammer. It struck the remains of the city's outer walls, instantly reducing them to molten slag. The shockwave that followed sent bodies flying, both human and Craxian alike. Bonner hit the ground hard, his ears ringing. His visor flickered as his HUD struggled to process the destruction. When he lifted his head, he saw a crater where his fallback point had once been. A second shot came, then a third. The Craxians weren't just targeting strongholds. They were leveling everything. Bonner pushed himself up, his muscles screaming in protest. He tapped his communicator. "Command, we need a solution, now. That thing is tearing us apart." Static. Then, a voice crackled through. "Sergeant, we're working on it. Hold them off as long as you can." Bonner exhaled sharply. Not the answer he wanted, but it would have to do. The ground forces were moving now, Craxian reinforcements pouring in from newly landed dropships. They charged with renewed fury, their weapons firing wildly. This wasn't a battle anymore. It was a slaughter. Bonner's soldiers fought back with everything they had, but against the dreadnought, their weapons felt like pebbles thrown at a mountain. Every shot that struck the ship's shields simply vanished, absorbed without a trace. Then, something changed. A new sound filled the air, a low hum, building in intensity. The ground beneath Bonner vibrated, and he looked up just in time to see streaks of blue light cutting through the darkness. The human fleet had arrived. Sleek, angular warships emerged from the clouds, their engines burning bright against the night sky. Humanity's last hope. A transmission came through, this time on a private channel. The voice was calm, controlled. "This is Admiral Hayes of the UHS Resolute. We're taking that ship down." Bonner allowed himself a grim smile. It was about time. The human ships wasted no time. A barrage of missiles and energy blasts rained down on the dreadnought, striking its shields with relentless force. For the first time, the Craxian warship staggered. Its shields flickered, straining against the sheer firepower being thrown at it. Cyros's voice returned, but this time it was laced with fury. "You think your pathetic ships can stand against me?" The dreadnought retaliated. A single pulse wave erupted from its core, expanding outward like a shockwave from a dying star. Every human ship caught in its path was sent spinning out of control, their systems overloaded by the sheer force of the blast. Bonner's heart pounded. They needed to end this. Fast. He switched to the command channel. "Hayes, tell me you have a plan." The Admiral's response was instant. "We do, but you're not going to like it." Bonner wiped the sweat from his brow. "Lay it on me." "There's a weakness in their shield system, but we have to get inside the dreadnought to exploit it." Bonner exhaled slowly. He knew what that meant. A direct insertion, a suicide mission. But what other choice did they have? He turned to his squad, his expression hard. "We're going in." No hesitation. Not a single soldier questioned him. Because this was humanity's last stand. Bonner's boots hit the metallic floor of the Craxian dreadnought with a dull thud. His squad moved like ghosts behind him, their weapons raised, scanning every corridor for movement. The mission was simple: disable the dreadnought from the inside before it could finish what it had started. But simple never meant easy. The air was thick with the scent of burning metal and ozone, the aftermath of the human fleet's initial bombardment. The ship had taken damage, but it was still operational. If they didn't act fast, it would wipe out the remaining human forces on the surface. Bonner adjusted his grip on his rifle and tapped his comm. "We're in." Moving toward the core. Admiral Hayes responded instantly. "Copy that. Be advised. Craxian forces are aware of your presence. Expect heavy resistance." Bonner smirked. He was counting on it. They pushed forward, their armor's adaptive cloaking keeping them hidden as they maneuvered through the dreadnought's dimly lit corridors. The ship hummed beneath their feet, its power core pulsing like a beating heart. The deeper they went, the more Bonner felt the weight of the mission pressing down on him. Suddenly, a deep guttural growl echoed through the halls. Bonner raised a fist. "Stop." The squad froze, pressing against the cold walls of the passageway. Shadows moved ahead. Then red eyes flickered to life in the darkness. Craxian elites. Bonner clenched his jaw. These weren't the panicked foot soldiers they had cut down before. The elites were the best of the best, genetically enhanced, battle-hardened, and armed with weapons that could tear through human armor like paper. The lead Craxian stepped forward, scanning the hallway. Its armor gleamed under the flickering emergency lights, a predator searching for its prey. It knew something was here. Bonner's heartbeat slowed. Timing was everything. He waited. 1 breath. 2. The Craxian took another step. Bonner struck. His knife found the gap in the alien's armor before it could react, slicing clean through its throat. The elite choked on its own blood as Bonner yanked the blade free and fired 2 rounds into its skull. The silence shattered. The remaining Craxians roared, their weapons igniting with plasma energy. Bonner's squad moved as one, unleashing hell. Gunfire filled the corridor, the sharp crack of human weapons cutting through the deeper hum of alien plasma rifles. The fight was brutal, fast, and unforgiving. Soldiers fell, human and Craxian alike, but Bonner didn't stop. He couldn't. A Craxian warrior lunged at him, its claws swiping for his throat. Bonner ducked, rolled to the side, and emptied his rifle into its chest. It collapsed in a heap, smoke rising from its body. "Keep